As I ride through Kandahar City's Sub-District 9, I see a naked, dust-covered kid playing along the road. When he picks up a large rock and hurls it at a truck, I wonder aloud, who lets their kid run around naked throwing rocks? What kind of place is this? So writes Major Reverend George Tiger, a Unitarian Universalist who serves as a chaplain in the United States Army, reflecting on his experience in Afghanistan. He continues, years of war and violence have produced a perversely unique system where hurling rocks at others is a legitimate sport. It is easy to become cynical, even contemptuous, of those kids who throw rocks. However, we must not allow our anger to numb our compassion. If our entire world, he says, from our first breath, was defined by poverty, war, death, dirt, and dust, how would we perceive the world around us? Maybe rock throwing would not seem so strange. My son, Major Reverend Tiger says, has grown up seeing men in uniform as the good guys, not a threat. When his bunny rabbit died, he cried for a day and buried it in the backyard. That is as close to death as he has ever been. He takes a hot bath every night. His world is secure, reliable, and good. He is happy, safe, and loved. That kid with the rock has never known the world my son takes for granted. His world is dangerous, uncertain, and rough. Still, he knows how to throw rocks. There's one certain thing in an uncertain world, so that is what he does. Understanding this, my response is compassion. Compassion for a child who seeks to hurt me. Compassion for a child who is no less a child of God than my own son. I cannot change this world, but I must try to understand it. Otherwise, Tiger concludes, hit with a rock is just one more kind of enemy, instead of the person he really is, a kid who, like my own son, only wants to be happy, safe, and loved. Major Reverend Tiger displays a depth of compassion and a clarity of vision about the larger context that produced this rock-throwing child. I wish many more leaders developed such clear-seeing compassion. In my experience, many Unitarian Universalists or UUs do share this capacity for empathy, for imagining ourselves into the life experience of another person and not being too quick to jump to conclusions or judge people. Of course, it's easier to extend such open caring to a child in the midst of war who has learned to throw rocks than with, say, those who may seem to be political enemies here at home. Those who appear ready to throw rocks, so to speak, at any group who comes in their line of sight. I'm not suggesting there's no cause for fear. While a child in a war-torn country can do little real damage by throwing rocks, political leaders in our country, the world's only superpower, can do plenty of harm, both at home and abroad, with all of the metaphorical rocks that they throw. And our children are watching how all of us are acting during this unusually divisive election season. The Southern Poverty Law Center conducted a survey of school teachers to explore how the 2016 presidential campaign is affecting our schools. A recurring theme was that children are not only scared about what may happen to them and their families after the election, but many are imitating the attitudes and behaviors they have observed on the campaign trail and even in their own homes. We adults must fix this. And we cannot do it if we allow ourselves to be baited into the same kind of reactivity and anger that is being delivered to us. We cannot do it if we model the same behavior that is now plaguing schools, where, as one teacher wrote, students are quick to become accusatory and condemn others for having a different point of view. where students are more apt to get into shouting matches than to have a discussion about something, as another teacher wrote. Nor can we fix it by simply avoiding conversation about the political scene, as many educators are doing. I'm convinced that instead, as conversations continue both before and after the election, we must embody a different way of being. And that means starting with ourselves, starting with the love we carry in our hearts. When our spirits are parched by all the arrogant things we have heard said about people, when we are thirsting amid the haughty disregard around us, let us be revived with the gentle rain of loving kindness. Let us be refreshed by the peace of clouds that block all that is harsh, and the steady drumbeat of generous showers that for a time softly muffle all other sounds, bringing relief and ease. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. We can model a different way of being by grounding ourselves in loving kindness. And to borrow a phrase from the Buddhist writer Pema Chodron, we can model a different way of being by not biting the hook. Not biting the hook. Can you picture the fish in the pond, startled by the dangerous fleeting hook that has just appeared, cold-blooded heart beating faster, ready to attack this silver stranger? But the angry fish who bites the hook will only hurt itself. I think this is a bit like what my mother meant. When I was a kid, and my older brother would tease me, he was a pretty good brother overall, but he did like to tease me. She would tell me, "Don't let him get your goat." I'll let you in on a secret. I was in my late 20s before I finally was able to avoid letting my brother get my goat. Or at least able to avoid showing that I was letting him get my goat. Don't let word get back to Georgetown. I'd like to learn a little faster with those who demean whole groups of people in public discourse. When a public figure throws a rock with a blatant insult to people with disabilities or a subtle dig at the poor, I do not want to let them get my goat. When a politician insults immigrants or people of color, or when a politician labels many of their opponents' followers as deplorable, I do not want to bite the hook. I do not want to let anger and fear overpower me. I do not want to let my words drip with contempt that my child will hear and will internalize. As apparently so many children of parents, both for and against some of our leading candidates, have done, to the point where one middle school teacher in Pampa, Texas, told the Southern Poverty Law Center, "The name of a candidate alone is enough to derail the class." All by itself, just uttering a name, and so much for your learning environment. So how do we avoid biting the hook? Pema Chodron writes that, quote, "The best way to develop our ability to stay fully present with the experience of being triggered and to equate that with loving kindness is in meditation. This is where we can train and not getting swept away." I think she's right about that. What stood between my reactive child self letting my brother hit my goat when he teased me, and my more composed young adult self holding it together better were for me years of daily meditation. Children goes on to describe 4 R's of the process of transforming this urge to take the bait and bite the hook. Recognizing what is going on in us, our reactivity. Refraining from embracing those feelings. Relaxing with the underlying urge to react. And resolving to interrupt momentum like this for the rest of our lives. We can add a 5th R. I'd like to add a 5th R, which is the reward we get from distancing ourselves from our habitual response. We get to keep the energy that we would have expended thrashing on the hook. The energy that would have been lost in reacting to the insult. So the 5th R is rechanneling that energy to other, better uses. And we don't have to take up meditation to practice these 5 R's. We can do so whenever we feel ourselves starting to get triggered. Whenever we encounter someone who, in their uncertainty, knows only how to throw rocks. Right there in that moment, as our throat first constricts, or our belly tightens, or we hear the tone of our own voice growing sharp. If we don't catch it early on, we can reflect on these things after we've had a meltdown and started to calm and return home to ourselves. And we can breathe into it and offer our agitated self a good helping of loving kindness so that we may be peaceful and at ease. When we are well, when we are whole, when we conserve our energy for useful responses, we are in a better position to do something about that which troubles us. Like helping voters get to the polls, or showing up in solidarity for the Black Lives Matter demonstration. By keeping ourselves centered and focused, we can teach young people how to be active citizens too, so that we can steer our nation back toward a more civil form of discourse that can solve problems. A way of being together that embodies shared identity and common purpose, where other people are not divided up into categories of friends and foes, people like me and scary others, but where each person is seen whole, where each person is brought into our circle of loving kindness, even those who trigger us. Yes, especially those who trigger us. Whoever that may be for you in your personal life or our shared life as a country, I invite you now to picture someone who pushes your buttons. Let's bring those triggery people into our awareness right now. Recognizing that such people may often be acting out of a state of anxiety and fear themselves, let us wish them well and whole. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. This is one of the hardest things we can do, and I believe one of the most powerful. Offering loving kindness to others need not mean accepting abuse of any kind. If someone is treating us poorly, they are not living up to their best self. Not only do we deserve better, but we can also help them by not accepting this from them. Here in this church, by calling them back into covenant. In our school or workplace or community, by holding them accountable. We must be genuine in our care for others. We can't really fake it. But saying no to harmful behavior is a real way of loving both ourselves and the other person. May you be filled with loving kindness we offer to all. Imagine if police officers and the communities they police could practice loving kindness with each other. It would cut against the fear of people of color that our culture has ingrained in most of us, including most of our officers. It would cut against the fear of police that hundreds of years of state-sanctioned brutality and mistreatment has ingrained in African Americans and other people of color. The Black citizens may not feel they could risk trusting police this way, especially in moments of confrontation. After all, as we keep seeing, their very lives are at stake. Thus, the burden of change falls on police. They are the ones with the professional training, military-grade equipment, the dozens of personnel, and those whom the courts almost always favor when in doubt. In short, they are the ones with the power of the state backing them up. Theirs is the institution with the long-standing pattern of harm. Theirs is the vow to protect and serve. The police are the ones who can respond to this call for change and say yes to it. And some of them are speaking up. Rodney Muttersbaugh, chief of police in Middletown, Ohio, is a white cop who felt he could not remain silent after watching the recent shooting death of Terrence Crutcher by Tulsa police officer Betty Shelby, another in a long string of shootings of unarmed Black people by officers that social media has made visible to more Americans. Chief Muttersbaugh wrote on Twitter, "As an officer, I am so sick and drained of some cops doing things like this. Stop." And later he tweeted, "Life is precious, man. Sorry we don't all agree. Compassion and empathy is eternally important. Just sick of seeing death and hate." That sounds to me like a police officer filled with loving kindness. A cop who is not turning away from the ugly truths that white America has been increasingly seeing, but rather saying yes to life and love instead of fear and death. The division between Black and blue, which I know we're all too aware of here in the Metroplex, is far from inevitable. In an NPR interview a few months ago, several leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement reflected on the progress being made. Opal Tometi remarked, "What we're witnessing right now is a deepening level of commitment from people of conscience from all different walks of life. We're seeing a really vibrant, multiracial movement for Black lives." Alicia Garza described a paradigm shift where the country increasingly does actually value Black lives. Not only in terms of policing and wanting to change those practices, but coming to terms with the conditions in which Black communities live and recognizing that broader changes are needed to achieve justice and equality. Patrice Colores described the conversations these leaders have about Black Lives Matter as a very, very old conversation. She says, "We talked about this movement really blossoming in the last 3 years, but we often, the three of us, talk about that we. We're part of the movement that's been happening for hundreds of years, and this just happens to be a tipping point." Through the people power of this movement, more and more citizens in our nation have become witnesses to the realities of racism playing out in policing, and more have come to experience sorrow empathy, and loving kindness. If we use our energy effectively, we can help make lasting changes. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole. Parker Palmer, the Quaker writer and sociologist, offers a helpful framework for how to move beyond all that might separate us and live into this we. To bridge the political divide that has become entrenched in our nation in recent decades, he says, we need to stop thinking in terms of us and them, going against the grain of what political campaigns today are often doing, and recognize that the divide itself is a shared problem. There are issues on which broad social consensus exists, but we don't hear much about those ideas. Instead, we've been coached to think of each other as the enemy. We've been taught to demonize or look down on people whose life experience and worldviews are different than our own. We've been conditioned to bite the hook. To move past this, Palmer suggests we must learn to rest in the tension of the different points of view that we and others hold. We need to be able to be in direct conversation with people whose views differ from ours, and to come to some such conversations not with the goal of winning them over to our understanding, but first and foremost with the goal of being in right relationship with that person. Palmer describes the stance of respecting the other person and being genuinely interested in why they think as they do. What about that person's life experience led them to their understanding? Bringing such open curiosity doesn't mean you have to agree with what you hear, but genuine dialogue is only possible if we respect each other. If we have been practicing love and kindness, both for ourselves and for others, we will be better able to hold the tension in such conversations. And we may be more grounded for those moments when it is necessary to tell another person that they have said something that deeply troubles us, something that fails to honor the inherent worth of every person. Now, we need not take a majority of the public to get our public conversation back on track to the common good. Parker Palmer points out that less than 5% of Americans were involved in the civil rights movement, and laws changed. The Black Lives Matter movement reminds us of the unfinished business that remains, but there can be no doubt that the earlier movement made progress. Interestingly, Parker Palmer echoes the Southern Poverty Law Center in emphasizing that one of our greatest points of influence is our children, who are keenly paying attention to us. They notice whether we wish others well or are prone to bite the hook. Let us teach them by our words and our example how to live with respect and loving kindness for all. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May we be peaceful and finding peace and ease, even if others are throwing rocks, especially when others are throwing rocks. Let us extend our loving kindness to other people, including those others who seem most different from us, if you are part of our shared nation, our common humanity. Whatever may happen in the weeks and months to come, let us strive for the peace, the well-being, and the wholeness of all. So may it be. I invite you to stand and bow your spirit as you're able for our closing hymn, number 298, Break Down My Measure.